All right, well, we're going to get into Mount Sinai now. We have another interesting presentation here, Kevin, so tell us about Mount Sinai.
So this is a photo taken in Saudi Arabia looking back across over to Egypt. This would be a sunset photo. You can see the nice palm trees here in the foreground. But some people are probably asking, why are you over in Saudi Arabia? The reason we're in Saudi Arabia, as we can see on the map here, is because the Red Sea crossing that we saw earlier is found at the Nuweiba Beach in the Sinai Peninsula, and it's in the Gulf of Aqaba. And Midian is where Mount Sinai should be. Midian is in Saudi Arabia, near the mountain here, Mount Sinai. All maps that are historically accurate will show Midian over here in this area of Saudi Arabia. Midian is where Moses fled to escape the punishment of killing the Egyptian. And 40 years later, he was at the mountain of God. And
because you will worship me on this mountain.
Yes, he was to bring the children of Israel back to this mountain, the fire incident with the burning bush. So he was in Midian at that point, and he was to bring the people back to that location. So we want to be looking in Saudi Arabia. So,
you know what I find interesting too is even though Ron Wyatt and Michael Rood and others say it's here, they're not the only ones. You have on your website some other quotes from some very knowledgeable and notable people.
Yes.
For example, Dr. Roy Knutson, he's a professor of biblical archaeology, says the visible evidence is quite overwhelming that the location of the true Mount Sinai has been discovered in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Herschel Shanks, you mentioned Herschel Shanks to me when we were talking before the program. He says Jabal al-Lawz is most likely the site for Mount Sinai. And then Dr. Dean McKenzie, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Oregon, says the evidence points to northwest Saudi Arabia as the location of the actual Mount Sinai.
Yeah, so there are, quote, authorities out there that are agreeing, yes, this is the correct mountain. And this is the place where Ron, he crossed the border in 1984 on foot from Jordan into Saudi Arabia, he and his sons, and they walked through the desert. It was a very strenuous hike for them, and that's when he was taken prisoner, supposedly, being accused of being an Israeli spy. But Ron Wyatt found this mountain there, and he asked the locals, and the locals said, Jebel Musa Hena, or the Mountain of Moses is here. And so you've got a local tradition out there that, yes, this is the Mountain of Moses, and of course they do respect Moses, the Muslims do.
Now there's two names there, Jabal al-Lawz and Jebel Musa?
Yeah, Jebel Musa Hena. They call it the Mountain of Moses.
Okay.
Yeah, is what they call it.
And we're talking about the same place?
Yes, same place. Same as Jebel al-Lawz, yes. And so here is the beach on the Saudi Arabian side of the crossing site there. Where
the Israelites came over,
yes,
from Nuweiba.
And that's where we saw in the previous segment where the chariot wheel was found.
Ah, okay.
In these waters here, so this is a continuation of the crossing site. And so from the beach area, you can also see where the column was cut down. The column that had the writing on it, death, Mizraim, Pharaoh, Yahweh, Solomon, water. So this was a column marking the spot for the Red Sea crossing. The authorities cut it down and took it someplace. We don't know where it is.
And what's interesting, there's two columns, and people might say, oh, well, that's just each culture had their own traditions of raising columns for this and that. But these are matching columns. They're the same granite.
Yes, they're from opposite sides of the crossing site, strategically placed, and then you have the chariot parts in these same waters. So they were placed there on purpose, for a reason. Pillars were used, in ancient times to mark places or events. And so, we can trust these columns in this particular case. Solomon's Seaport was just to the north. He knew of this area, what was going on here. So in our next slide here, we can see Tim Mahoney in the foreground, and in the background, you can see the split rock, the first split rock.
Yes, okay.
So we went from the second one back to the first one here. And of course, Tim Mahoney, he is with the website patternsofevidence.com. They're putting together a documentary on this and the Red Sea crossing. But you can see in the distance the split rock on top of a 300-foot tall hill. The split rock is 50 feet in height. It's a very prominent rock. Now in Numbers 20:11, and Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. So God provided for them. He gave them provision. And
water for 1 million people.
Yes.
And probably several million
so
animals.
Probably 3 million people, plus their livestock. Here you can see the split rock where you can see a large amount of water erosion. A large amount of water erosion coming down from the rock. In the foreground here you can see channels being cut into the rock. The water has eroded the rock to a smooth surface here.
And this is the rock that in modern Western times that Jim and Penny Caldwell, I mean the Bedouin have always known this is here, but this is where Jim and Penny Caldwell discovered this one.
Yes. After Ron discovered the mountain, Jim and Penny went out there and they also found this rock. So very, very large rock. The split in the rock is so large you can actually walk through it. And a large amount of water erosion inside the rock itself. Here you can see how it stands out prominently above the peak there. And so here you can see the split in the rock where a person could walk through it. When God split it sure split, and then the water erosion coming up out of there, spewing up, it created more space probably in the rock, eroding it away. And you can see water erosion coming down from the rock.
Yeah, and even if you saw this and you were a skeptic and said, well, that rock has always been split, or it's a natural outcropping, and that erosion is wind erosion, well, you're not going to have wind erosion flowing down in a pattern similar to what water would create.
Yes, this is definitely water erosion coming down. Again, this is a desert area, very little rainfall at all out here, and yet all this water erosion you can see on the rocks coming down from this giant split rock. So God did provide water for them lovingly, even though they were impatient and rebellious, kind of like us, I guess.
Aren't we all? Yes.
Yeah. So in our next slide, you can see Ross Patterson. He's standing next to the split there in the rock.
Now, those who are not familiar with Ross Patterson, who is he in relation to all of this?
He's a friend of mine in New Zealand who also promotes Ron Wyatt's work.
Oh, very good.
Presentations, and he was able to make it out there. And so our next slide, we can see the altar Jehovah Nissi in the foreground. And in the background, we can see the split rock once again standing up. Very prominent rock in the background. And
so this is an altar of some kind
this mentioned
here.
in the Bible, yes, this altar. So again, this is matching the biblical account once again. And there's also some circular rock formations. I don't know if they held the bottoms of the tents down or something, because you see some round rock formations where the children of Israel were encamped in this area.
That's similar to what we find in North America with the Cherokee Indians and such across the country, that in certain areas where they would camp, there's these circles where their tents were.
Okay, yeah.
At different times of the year, yeah.
Sure, yeah. So over on the other side of the mountain is the front of Mount Sinai, and you can see in the distance the blackened peak of the mountain. Once again, the Bible says that the mountain was a smoke. It was on fire. And so the mountaintop here is blackened. When you walk up to the top of the mountain, several people have, you turn the stone over, the top of it's black, the bottom of it is brown.
Really?
So there's evidence that it was burned on top, and the natural color is on the bottom, and it's brown.
Now that answers a question I was going to ask, and you've already answered it, because I have heard a secondary theory that this is just a different type of rock. It's a black rock that happens to have this line right at a certain point near the peak.
Yeah, but that's not the case. Yeah, this is a burned mountaintop, because underneath it, it is brown material. So it's actually a day hike to make it to the top of the mountain and to make it back down, strenuous walk. But people have been up there and they've seen the blackened, burned.
And that is the tallest mountain in the area?
It is. The upper 2/3 of Saudi Arabia is the tallest of mountains. And that's another clue that ancient historians have said, that it was the tallest of mountains in Midian. And that's what it is.
Here it is from Josephus. We were just looking at that now. So
Yeah.
Josephus said that Mount Sinai was the highest of mountains in the city of Midian, which is just outside of Albad.
Yes, Albad is 15 miles to the south.
Okay.
And Albad is where Jethro is from. On some maps, you'll see the name Jethro next to Albad. And the caves of Moses are there also at Albad.
And also Philo said that Mount Sinai was located east of the Sinai Peninsula and south of Palestine, which puts it again in this vicinity.
Again, we're in the correct location. So you have all these ancient historians identifying the site, and you have the Bible saying Mount Sinai in Arabia, Galatians 4. So it's pretty incredible. It's been lost for so many millennia, and yet here it is coming out near the end of time for a demonstration of truth for mankind. So Exodus 19, and Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. My friend Aaron Sin was out there around 2003 with Tim Mahoney, and again you can see the blackened peak in the background, and at the base of the mountain, we'll see a little bit later, is the remains of an altar. Once again, fitting the biblical account. You can see a guardhouse on the right edge of this photo. They put a fence around the front of the mountain, and a guardhouse and a sign telling people to stay away. This is an archaeological area. So the Saudi authorities are recognizing this as an archaeological site.
Well, having put that much effort into it, they know.
Yes.
They know darn well what this is.
Sure. And then another photo here from a distance further back from the mountain. You can see, again, the encampment area, and the left side of the photo in the distance, that's an area where Elijah's cave is. And here in the very center of the photo is Elijah's cave. It's in a shadow, but it's in the, kind of the very center of the photo here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can see it there.
Yeah. And he, Elijah, arose, he did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God, and he came thither unto a cave and lodged there. 1 Kings 19.
Now, how many people would catch on to that this is the same? Because we hear of Elijah's cave, but normally you wouldn't tie the two together. You wouldn't stop at Mount Horeb. Oh, yes, that's right. This is the same place. You know, it's funny that it's just all in the same area.
Everything matches here, you know, the biblical account. And this is taken from inside the cave, and we're looking out into the valley below. This is quite a photograph here.
Wow. Now, that is, there in the photo you can see that's the Saudi government's buildings, is it not?
Well, actually those are Bedouin buildings out in the
okay.
far distance. But just in front of that, toward the mountain a little bit, is the fencing they put up, the Saudi authorities, to keep people out.
And there's all kinds of things down there. There's even a modified corral of types.
There is, remains of an altar, remains of pillars at the base of the mountain. You can see Elim. Elim was where there were 12 wells and 70 palm trees, we're told. And if you go there today, there's still 12 wells at this site.
So this is no doubt Elim.
Yes. So this is, again, confirmation we're in the right area. And
it's on the right trail. It's on the way, is it not?
Yes, it is. Right. And so we're back at Mount Sinai again, and Ross Patterson is pointing to a spot in the distance. This is where the golden calf incident took place. We're going to see that shortly. But this will give you an idea of how Moses is coming down the mountain, and he could have seen the dancing and the apostasy taking place. And of course, his anger became hot, righteous indignation against the apostasy of the people. In Exodus 32, and it came to pass as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount. So that's what he saw. And here we can see, this is an aerial view of the large rocks where the golden calf was placed on top of this. The Saudi authorities, they have placed a fence around this once again, and there's a sign saying this is an archaeological area. stay out.
And the clue is that there are paintings on the side that are not indicative of that area, are they?
That's right. You've been there, I guess. Right?
I've seen photographs.
Okay. Yeah. So here we are. This is a closer shot of it. And on the sides of this, as you say, there are inscriptions of the Apis bull and so forth on the side of this from Egypt. So they came from Egypt. They're accustomed to this, Egyptian bull designs and so forth. And here Ross is next to one of them.
And that is not native to that area.
Right,
That's the key.
The Saudi locals, do not draw this type of Egyptian drawing on the rocks, in their area. So this is something brought over from Egypt, these designs and so forth. So, and then Ross is next to some other carvings here, more bulls and calves, and you see a camel and so forth. So a lot more inscriptions here showing people were here, and again it's tied back to Egypt. So, and here's some more drawings Ross is next to. This is out in the encampment area.
Oh, so this is not at the altar itself. There are more of these.
These are a little bit away from the actual golden calf altar. These right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then this is Dr. Kim, who was out there, went out there 12 times. He worked for the Saudi prince, and he found numerous drawings out here also. He also found these artifacts, incredible amount of pottery and so forth in the encampment area.
And he was, wasn't he a personal physician to the king?
He was to one of the princes, yes. Yes. And then he found, if you can see here, the arrows pointing to a menorah.
Wow.
He found a inscription of a menorah where it was actually made there at Mount Sinai, the golden candlestick. So this is where it was made, and this is the oldest image ever of the menorah or golden candlestick.
And again, even if you were to argue that, what would a Hebrew inscription be doing in the middle of a Muslim Arab country?
Exactly, yeah. This is showing the Jewish roots of these drawings out there and of the people that were there. And then Ron Wyatt found this millstone in the encampment area. Once again, evidence of the people occupying, and this would have been used with manna, grinding up the manna. So this is, a manna stone, so to speak.
Wow,
Pretty
absolutely
incredible.
amazing. Well, we're going to have to cut it short.